Hey, Razvax here. Today we're going to be reviewing the Fixie from Militiaworks. This video was sponsored by, well, me actually, because I'm financially irresponsible and I buy boutique AR-15s to make reviews that will make less than 10% of that money back. Yeah, buddy. So, if you want to enable my financial irresponsibility, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and if you'd like, go over to the subscribe star and become my sugar daddy. Okay. Militiaworks is a company, or should I say a dude, out of Wisconsin that assembles rifles in-house. While most of their products are built to order, there is a very simplistic set of rifles to choose from as a baseline. There's the Joe Carbine, which offers an excellent value for $1,000, and is probably what I would actually recommend for about 80% of customers. It was also reviewed by Hop right up here, and he views it as incredible bang for your buck. The crane, which is a North American endangered species of large birds who migratory path. What website am I on? And the dissonant, which was reviewed by 1911 Syndicate, and is what happens if you take that Joe Carbine from earlier, let Militiaworks tack on about $400 of parts, triggers, furniture, charging handle, and more, a $100 included Cerakote job. So if all the parts are here to your liking, then I would probably get a dissonant style rifle, but if you want to do your own thing, get the Joe. Okay, that brings us to the Fixie, the point of this review. The Fixie is basically that dissonant rifle I mentioned earlier, except now it has a 13.9 barrel, a mid-length gas system, and the iconic classic front sight block with a free float rail. I'm going to shave off 5 minutes of this video by just putting this on screen. Go pause if you want to read any of this. The bolt and BCG is a C158 HPT MPI tested BCG from Black River Tactical with branding on it. Whew. Okay, cool. It's worth noting my Fixie is sort of a modification of what a standard Fixie is. The newer versions have a longer rail covering the front sight block on the bottom and slightly long barrel for dwell time, which is a noticeable improvement. Outside of that, it's basically the same as mine right here. At the end of the video, I'll also talk about how I have mine configured, though it is pretty bare bones at this point. Before proceeding, I'd like to address the front sight block size question in the room, because it is absolutely a legitimate question. Why the fuck would I spend 1,600 doll hairs on an AR-15 and 22 when I can get an Air Precision or other value brand for about half that? For some people, right out of the gate. No, there is no reason that will convince you. It's not quite for everyone, and it doesn't need to be for everyone. And while Militiaworks does offer the Joe Carbine, which will probably appeal to more people as a cheaper entry-level rifle, since most people just end up tearing their rifle apart anyway to customize it, it doesn't change the fact that, once again, the Joe, the Fixie, the Dissonant, all end up being roughly $200 to $400 over the basic bitch pumpkin spice latte, Aero, MMP, whatever. We can shave off some of the moolah if we realize we're getting a nicer trigger, ambi controls, bolt forwarding device, a free Cerakote job that would typically cost $150 and more. But that leaves a couple of Benjis still on the table. Where does this money go? Well, the fact is you're getting a rifle from a shop that builds a rifle both as a passion and a life's calling, with a heavy emphasis on quality control and perfection. And that is going to cost something. And don't say that that is not in demand. There are absolutely established brands that work off of this premise: Sons of Liberty Gunworks, BCM, and more. They don't OEM their own parts, they functionally just assemble the thing for you. But make sure the vast majority of the time you're getting a rifle that was built to a higher level of care, excellence, and more, versus something like an Aero, PSA, Smith & Wesson that are cranked out in soulless gajillions. Now don't get me wrong, my main go-to rifle at the moment is an Aero Precision rifle. I've run the snot out of it. So don't misunderstand what's being said here. The premise that someone meticulously put together your rifle and checked every single part with tools you probably don't have, Well, that will stick with you forever, while the sting of the $300 or $200 or $100 won't. The follow-up question is, okay, Militiaworks might be competitive cost-wise with a BCM or Suns, but why not go with those over, Militiaworks? Well, that's sort of where reviewers like me come in, because yes, on the surface, if you didn't know this company existed or you heard of them in passing, it probably would be a safer bet to go with an established brand. For me personally, there's one final aspect that sets Militiaworks apart from these brands. While it's probably not the correct term, Militiaworks honestly gives me custom shop vibes. I've actually watched live streams of Dan, the owner of Militiaworks, put together rifles for his customers. And he does obviously the usual stuff you would expect a competent assembler to do, which is, put all the parts together properly, use proper tools, proper torque specs, and more. But he also takes it that just extra little bit. He will inspect a part and be like, hey, that's good to go, or no, I don't like this. Let me meticulously work at this product for 20 minutes to fix it. Oh, I did a pin and weld job. Is it functional? Yes, but I don't quite like how it looks. Let me work at it for a bit. Put the trigger in. The Cerakote job feels just a hair high here. Let me measure it. Yep, okay, let me chamfer out these trigger pins. The list goes on and on and on. I'm not an expert AR manufacturer. I don't know exactly what he does behind the scenes. I've worked an R&D engineering job where we produce products that literally get sent to Mars or other high tolerance areas. And our level of care and perfection and attitude was not too dissimilar to this. Every level, every step of the way needs an extreme level of care. And it's pretty impressive to see this out of an AR manufacturer front and center. Now, obviously, we had more sophisticated tools than this, but the point stands. Now, does your AR-15 need this level of care? Yeah, probably not. Do I want my AR-15 to have this level of care? Oh yeah, absolutely. So do you. The end question only ends up being, how much are you willing to pay for that? And that's something only you can answer. For the rifle itself, I've had the Fixie for 2,020 rounds, majority suppressed, and I mean exactly that. I meticulously count my rounds over about 4 months. And as you always hear on YouTube videos, I did not clean it for that 2,000 rounds. That being said, I'm not going to bullshit you. It wasn't flawless, like is often said, but I was extremely harsh on this rifle trying to find the breaking point. Getting to about 800 to 1,000 rounds, I got about 2 to 5 malfunctions, and all of these were the type where I tried to drop the bolt on a reload and the bolt doesn't go all the way forward. Most of that can be attributed to bad mags and using steel ammo primarily for running the gun. From here, I really began to push it by only relubing it once and then going on a non-stop 3-day shoot where we did about 700 rounds through this rifle, all suppressed in a very short time span. So it was completely dried out, and by the second day it was really beginning to chug. Specifically on those aforementioned reloads where you try to drop the bolt on a stuffed magazine with steel ammo, sand, and more, and a lot of times I would try to drop the bolt and it wouldn't go all the way forward. I'd run the charging handle and that would give it the energy it needed to reload. And then I had one legitimate malfunction where the bolt either didn't seat fully into battery, I pulled the trigger, got a click, or it was a bad primer. I don't know, I don't recall. I went on another trip with no lube, and while the gun did work with the suppressor, as soon as I took the can off, the gun completely choked up. It was no longer functional. Like, it kind of worked, but there were a lot of instances of just strings of malfunctions. After that, I cleaned it, did 2 range trips, and there were absolutely 0 malfunctions, even on my completely clapped out mag, which is, at this point, almost a decade old. Now, technically, there's one more aspect I need to talk about. The first 700 rounds weren't actually quite flawless. More specifically, the first 150 rounds had a sort of break-in period, which is the first time I've actually ever needed to break in a rifle. Rephrased, I had about 10 malfunctions in the first 150 rounds with both brass and steel ammo. Doubling back, the first aspect is fairly self-explanatory. Guns fail when they get increasingly dirty without lube. To me, it's whatever. I have a Daniel Defense, I have a Sons of Liberty Gunworks, and I have an Aero Precision. You treat a gun unreasonably, they will malfunction. This includes AKs, this includes AR-15s, this includes whatever. Specifically here, if you use a lot of Tula and brass 223, so a little less power than 5.56 loadings, alongside clapped out magazines with dirt and sand, you're gonna get malfunctions. It is what it is. Not to call anyone out specifically, but I feel like this notion of I ran my rifle for 5,000 rounds without cleaning, 0 malfunction, I'm pretty sure most of the time people are straight up lying. The US government has chased this mythical minimal malfunction thing and spent millions of dollars trying to do it, and all we got out of that program was the SCAR 16. That being said, the break-in period was a little more concerning at the time, but judging how the rifle has performed in adverse conditions, I'll take it. Some people are going to find the above performance, what you see on screen, concerning, and that is a valid concern to have, but for me, personally, this is about standard. At every rifle that I've ever run, it does get to a point where it just completely begins to gum up without proper care. Now, there are solutions to this. There are rifles that can overcome this, but the only way to do that is by overgassing the shit out of the rifle. Okay, small detour, but I think it's worth mentioning, right? The rifle malfunctioned, but it's important to give it a fair shake, but it's also important to mention it. Beyond that, I had no product issues with the firearm, worked as you would expect, as any AR-15 does. The Cerakote job has held up very well. I've been very harsh with it, far better than a lot of other Cerakotes from other manufacturers. I'm looking at you, PSA Dagger. And that's about that. While I did talk about Militiaworks for a good percentage of this video, note, this video specifically is actually only talking about the Fixie, right? Okay, cool. Alright, speaking of which, let's dive into my setup and the parts on this rifle. Alright, we're now on the ground floor, the Nova Stomping Ground. Just going to go over the rifles, not only explain some of the parts that you find on here, as chosen by Militiaworks, but more importantly why I chose this configuration of rifle. I think the big thing, the big question, the big reason why people are going to buy the Militiaworks, or question why I bought the Militiaworks, is the front sight block up here. Fixed front sight block. Specifically, this one is a mid-length front sight block, so it's a little bit further down. You get a lot more rail space, and it gives, honestly, quite a unique aesthetic. So the big question is, why? Why the front sight block? Exiting why I did it for a second, there are a couple really good reasons to buy a front sight block. Specifically, if you are running a irons only setup, it's non-negotiable in my opinion. If you're running irons only, it needs to be a fixed front sight block. I think also if you're very, very keen or locked into your backup aiming solutions, then sure, a front sight block could also be a really important option for you. There are also a number of other benefits that I've alluded to in the past, like you can use the front sight block as a shadow to confirm parallax when you're looking through low magnification optics. They are useful for other aspects like being a heat sink to protect your gas tube just that little bit longer in really high rates of fire, There's a lot of reasons. Ultimately, to me, these are more reasons to excuse the usage of a front sight block versus reasons that you would seek out to run a front sight block. So, yeah, that brings us to why I have it on my rifle. I have a front sight block on my rifle because it looks cool. Yeah, sometimes I'm going to give up some function for some form. Because there are issues with running front sight blocks. My biggest issue or gripe with running these fixed sighting systems, especially when they're exposed like so, is that if you're not paying attention, and this happens even when I'm semi-conscious about it, I'm trying to rest the rifle over here, but I end up slipping, impinging, or bracing off of some or all of the front sight block. And if you're really behind the rifle, you'll find yourself throwing shots that you would have otherwise hit. And that is a downside. Now, it's worth noting, Militiaworks has since changed the rail system, the default rail system on the Fixie, to something that covers the entire front sight block, thus removing that as an issue. Moving forward for a second, the Knox flash hider / compensator. This is required, as far as I know, to have a 13.7-inch barreled gun. Without the Knox and a 13.7-inch barrel, you won't get the stupid ATF barrel length requirements, and you need to actually go 13.9 with most dead air flash hiders, and then obviously 14.5 with other systems. However, how is the Knox itself, right? Would I run the Knox again? No, probably not, actually. While in certain circumstances, right, if I'm in an awkward position bracing off of an object, or I'm shooting sideways, right, like pieing a corner, stuff like that, I think the Knox is very okay, right? It does a good job of taming the recoil and keeping the gun very flat, even if I'm not doing my job in recoil management. But that's actually where my issue and gripe with the Knox come into play. I think if you are managing your recoil and you're properly behind your rifle, the gun will begin to recoil downwards. And you can see it in a lot of the footage. The gun recoils down. And that's not necessarily technically a problem, right? You can counteract that. It's just so unique compared to all of my other AR-15s that it is a weird thing, and I'm it's awkward to correct via muscle memory. So ultimately, it actually ends up making me go slower. Now, before you say, yes, it is timed, and yes, it is timed for a left-handed shooter. The secondary issue I find with it is that the flash hiding properties aren't quite as it's advertised to be. It's stated that it's the same as a flash hider. No, it's not. You can see this thing at night way more than most flash hider designs. You can see the fireballs coming out of the little ports on the side. Now, is it a compensator level of a ported break level of fireball? No, it's not. But it's also not a flash hider level. So that and the way this manages the recoil for me, generally not a huge fan, but it's also not such of a big deal or such of a detriment that I'm going to go ahead and fucking drill out the pin and weld and put a different flash hider on here. So, flashlight. On a rifle setup like this, where I want to be very minimalistic, I'm not really running night vision as a rule or as a requirement. I want a good flashlight system. And I found God, all these names suck. The E2 TXL or something. Malkoff head is, to me, a very good balance of feature sets. Why I chose this over other options on the market. It is one of the farther throwing options that doesn't go all in like, say, a Z-Bolt does with 1 bajillion candela but 0 splash. I think this is a fairly good compromise, though it's obviously on the higher end of the candela spectrum. But more importantly, compared to some of the other options on the market, it still uses CR123s or 18650s. And I'm a big fan of the logistical aspect of preparedness, and I have a lot of CR123s. I have a lot of 18650s. And I can keep these recharged on the go, or I can use, disposable batteries, right? One-time use batteries. No tape switch, because this rifle overall fits into my field rifle concept, right? Other people have called it the scout rifle, the urban defense, or the civilian defense rifle, whatever you want to call it. Who cares what you call it? But this rifle fits into that concept. This is more of a low-intensity rifle for me, something I bring in the car, something that I may bring with me in scenarios. I don't want to get into it. I have a video up here that discusses what I believe a field rifle should be. Now, is this the quintessential field rifle as described in that video? No, it's probably not. But it is the rifle I have, and I have set it up as such, right? Very simplistic. Oh, my feet's falling asleep. I need to move the mic. Okay, moving rearward, or I guess we'll cover the rail. It's a Midwest rail. Not much to say, right? It's right down the middle. Is it amazing? No. Is it terrible? No, it's a good rail. Somehow I've ended up with 3 Midwest rails, even though I don't have particularly any affinity towards them. It's weird how that worked out. The receiver of the rifle. This is where one of the Militiaworks party tricks comes into play. Note, Militiaworks buys these lowers, right? You can actually buy these lowers elsewhere, but you have this little forwarding device right here. This is only a bolt forwarding device. You can't press this and lock the bolt to the rear. You still have to use the bolt catch, bolt release. As a lefty, this initially didn't seem like it would have any purpose for me, because I can just press the bolt release over here with my pointer finger and it's faster. It's just straight up faster. So initially I thought that bolt forwarding device had no purpose, but I find often in awkward situations it's tough to reach this bolt release. So I'll do the right hand reload thing where you insert the mag and then your thumb comes up and drops the bolt. Well, now I can do that too. So it's a nice tool in the kit, and I actually ended up finding that I actually enjoyed the bolt forwarding device, even though initially I didn't. Safety, standard ambi safety. Initially, I was quite annoyed with the shaved style ambi safeties because I don't really understand the purpose. Well, I do. It's so it doesn't touch your finger when you're on the trigger and push on your finger. Personally, I've never given a shit. All my rifles have full side safeties on both sides, and I actually even found myself in certain scenarios when I was shooting long range and I wanted to use my thumb to engage the safety, struggling to engage the safety. Now, it's broken in enough that is no longer a concern. If I were to do it again, would I have a shaved safety like this? No, probably not, but it's not nearly as big of a deal as I initially once thought, where I was probably going to take it off at some point. Mag release that comes on this rifle. Initially, I believe this was going to be a Troy mag release, and I talked to the owner a lot about how that is a terrible idea, and I brought one of my brand new Troy mag releases out and put it on this rifle to demo the fact that Troy mag releases suck and they break pretty easily, or they fail pretty easily. I believe, as of this video, Militiaworks has now shifted to offer the forward control design ambi safety, and at this point I have three of them, and they all work great. This is my go-to ambi safety at this time. Beyond that, there isn't too much to say. I believe the production model offers two-stage, like nicer, lighter triggers. This one has a mil-spec trigger in it at this time. K2 grip, I mentioned in all my videos, most people understand this. I like me a K2 grip. It's all 100% personal preference, but I like K2 grips. So this one came with a K2 grip. Nice, I'm happy. Optic-wise, I have the ACOG ECOS or something like that. It's got a weird name. This is a Bobro. It's a Bobro. It's a Bobro QD mount built into the ACOG, or attached to the ACOG with some Trigicon branding on the side. It's fine. I wanted an ACOG that had a number of features. I wanted the ACOG that had the crosshair reticle, I wanted the fiber optic, and I wanted a QD mount. Why? Well, after reviewing this gun, I'm not just going to get rid of it. I like this rifle. I sought out this rifle because I wanted to keep it and I wanted to run it long term. The review, yeah, I'm doing the review because, you know, I have a lot of round counts on it. But this is something I wanted for me personally. But I do reviews on the internet, so the inclusion of a solid QD system allows me to take off the ACOG, review a new optic that I want to review, and then should I need this rifle, or I'm going to go do something, or an emergency crops up, or what the fuck ever, I just finished the review, I can now re-index the ACOG back on its spot and have my return to zero, and the rifle is ready to go, and I don't need to re-zero it. So that was a big reason why I chose this specific ACOG model, because it does come with that QD. It's also tan. Looks kind of good, no? My only downside gripe is it also comes with this auto adjust RMR. I think a lot of people's fears of this thing not being bright enough in transient lighting conditions, as in aiming inside to out into a bright environment, mostly alleviated. I've never had this thing be too dim in all the times I've used it. In fact, it's generally too bright. So that's actually my issue with the auto adjust model, which makes me think I might actually take this off and put it on my pistol and then put a manual adjust mode one onto the rifle, because I generally want to run it a little dimmer on a rifle for a smaller dot. I don't know why, but this ACOG comes with iron sights, which is kind of weird, to be frank. You already have a aiming system, two aiming systems. I don't know why there's a third aiming system. Back when I had a rear iron sight on this setup, I ended up with, 4 aiming systems on this rifle. I had the laser up front, I had the ACOG, I had the RMR, I had the iron sights, and then I had the main backup iron sights. Holy shit, brass facts can't count. That's 5 aiming systems on a single rifle. It's a little ridiculous. Finally, let's move rearward. We're doing a lot of talky, so let's wrap this shit up. The fixed stock. I believe all Militiaworks Fixies now come with adjustable stocks, and to be frank, that is the superior choice. Even though you might find yourself that the fixed length stock is your perfect length of pull, the reality is if you shoot in awkward positions, namely variable types of prone, sideways, half sitting, half prone on a rock, or off of an object, or whatever, you need an adjustable length of pull. Throw in body armor, now you need a new length of pull. Adjustable stocks are the way to go, in my opinion. That being said, there are some upsides to a fixed stock, and this is a rifle I would probably actually not use with full battle rattle. It's once again, more of a field rifle for me. So the fixed stock made sense here, and it also, let's be frank once again, it does add to the aesthetic of the whole design. This is a Fiberco sling, and I don't think it has a name. I think it's just the Fiberco sling. Probably my favorite sling now. Yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere. I think Hop just threw it at me because he didn't want the multicam one, and then I ran it, and I'm like, holy shit, this is actually really good. It's kind of a combination of the Blue Force gear sling, that really thick one that a lot of people use for machine guns and shit. It's kind of if that had a baby with one of the thinner style slings, right? So like a VCAT or VTAC sling or whatever, right? And it ends up working out really
really well. It's very minimalistic while also being incredibly functional, allowing you to do a lot of the things I like to do with a sling. So cinch it to my body, not cinch it to my body, use it for stabilization, so on and so forth. I think it strikes a really good balance. But at the end of the day, a sling is a sling. It's a sling, find what works for you. Okay, I think that about covers it. My closing thoughts is basically, I bought this rifle because I wanted this rifle specifically, because I want to keep shooting it. I wanted to add it to my arsenal, as CNN keeps calling it. I have not been disappointed. It's doing well, it shoots nicely, and it's reliable enough. Okay, good talk. We'll see you guys later.